All right. So I'm here with Senator Ron Johnson from my home state, Wisconsin, also chairman of the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. You've held several hearings in which doctors have spoken out on what's happened during the COVID-19 pandemic. So we'll just get right into it. What have you been finding in these investigations and in these hearings?
Well, we've been finding a fair amount. But I think the bombshell revelation really was what we uncovered after Bobby Kennedy forced, and he had to force people in HHS to download 11 million pages. Again, they weren't trying to be helpful. They're trying to overwhelm us, but my staff was very good at finding needles in the haystack. So what we found out is that on March 1st, Peter Marks, who's head of CBER, that's the division within FDA that approves vaccines and then surveils for safety with them. He was given a presentation, a briefing by Dr. Anna Scharsman. She was a data mining expert working with the inventor of the algorithm they're using to analyze the vaccine adverse event reporting system, VAERS. And they had found, because of the unique nature of having two injections that were very similar, also having very similar numbers of deaths and adverse events associated with them, that their algorithm that they used to analyze VAERS was going to mask or hide safety signals. And by the way, it's pretty easy to describe this. Prior to 2021, on average, VAERS had about 280 death reports associated with vaccines every year, 280. Okay, since 1990 through 2020, 280 on average. In 2021, they had 21,000 deaths reported worldwide. Now, let's just, for rough numbers, let's say about 10,000 of those occurred with Pfizer, 10,000 occurred with Moderna, then you had 280 out here, right? So when they looked at Pfizer, they compared Pfizer's 10,000 deaths to Moderna's 10,000 plus the 280. Pretty similar, right? Nothing disproportionate. Equally safe, equally dangerous. So then they look at Moderna, 10,000 deaths associated with them. Look at Pfizer, 10,000 deaths plus 280. Again, equally safe, equally dangerous. And, multiply that toward the, almost, I think it's about 1 million adverse events in 2021 as well. So they knew that their algorithm was going to hide and mask safety signals. Now, remember, they were touting VAERS in October 2020. Tom Shimagura, CDC, said, we got these safety surveillance systems. We have vSafe. We have all these. We are going to be tracking this, right? So now they found out their algorithm is going to hide and mask safety signals. Now, they were developing a new algorithm. So 26 days later, using that new algorithm, Dr. Anna Scharsman showed about 25 different safety signals using the new algorithm that no longer masked the safety signals, including things like sudden death, sudden cardiac death, pulmonary infarction, Bell's palsy, a couple of different types of strokes, okay, serious stuff, okay? The next 3 months, they continued to do more data mining because, these adverse event reports were deluging VAERS at the point in time. The contractor that handled it had to hire 290 additional people just to whittle down the backlog, okay? But rather than pin a medal on our chest and say, thank you, this is, we wanted, we wanted to see those needles in the haystack. We wanted to find anything that just might be a safety signal so we could alert doctors to be on the lookout for, provide us additional reports. That's what this is all about, No, they shunted her off to the side. They ordered her to cease and desist. In an interview with us, she said they considered it a pest, okay? And then they went and lied to the American public and said, we're just not seeing safety signals. So let me add a little bit to this. Again, this is all happening within months of the emergency use authorization. This is March of 2021, okay? In 2022, a bunch of us learned, because again, I didn't need a sophisticated algorithm. The VAERS reports themselves were screaming at me. So I started producing my little charts. I was being censored. The radio programs had me on. They'd be deplatformed by Facebook. But by about 2022, we're finding, because we're asking questions, you find out that CDC is using something called a proportional reporting ratio. That was the analytic technique they used to analyze VAERS. FDA was using empirical Bayesian with that algorithm. So anyway, so a bunch of us started bugging CDC. We want to see what you're seeing. We're looking at VAERS. You're all trashing VAERS. You say, oh, you can't trust VAERS. I mean, that's just a bunch of anti-vax cranks, right? Can't trust VAERS. Okay, well, what are you doing to surveil safety? Well, they're using PRRs. The problem is they wouldn't release them to anybody. So Children's Health Defense, ICANN, Del Bigtree's group, I wrote an oversight letter. Epic Times wrote a FOIA request. So, I mean, they're getting a lot of pressure. They finally released the PRRs, the proportional reporting ratio and results, to Epic Times. And there I think it's more than 100 safety signals. I think you have to have an overvalue of 2 on a PRR to be considered a safety signal, okay? But what they did when they were forced to release it, they just trashed PRR. Said this is noise, this is junk. You can't rely on this. Well, that's what you're going to rely on. Okay. So now they said a far better analytic technique is what FDA is using: empirical Bayesian analysis. Of course, it just so happens that the algorithm they're using for the empirical Bayesian analysis, they knew were hiding signals. So CDC trashed it. I mean, again, and by the way, I'm doing a comparison right now because we've got both data sets finally. So you can see the exact same safety signals. They were signaling on PRR. They were signaling on the updated algorithm for empirical Bayesian, but they were being hidden by the one they used. And they continued to use it. So that's what we know. Let me just, now, here's my supposition, okay? Put yourself in the position of the people at the FDA who may be under pressure, whatever, gave the emergency use authorization to those injections, right? I'm sure they're hoping and praying that these things are every bit as safe as supposedly Pfizer said they were, even though now we know there are more deaths in the control group than there were. Okay, but that came out later. Anyway, so they're hoping these things are safe. They are watching VAERS getting inundated, deluged with safety reports. I mentioned the contractor had to hire more people, right? They had to be shaking in their boots, okay? But then Dr. Anna Schwarzman briefs them on March 1st, fear not. Our algorithm is going to hide all those safety signals. So you can go lie to the American public and say, well, we can't change algorithms now. We have to be consistent. It would be improper for us to not be consistent, go to a whole new algorithm. We better stick with the way we've always analyzed VAERS since 1990. We got to stay with that system because we know it hides safety signals. So I can go lie to the American public. I can go lie to the injection injured, say we're just not seeing them. Now, I will add one more thing and then I'll quit in my field.
No, that's fine. Go ahead. Yeah.
Also in March of 2021, a Dr. Nath within NIH was leading a group of research scientists who were diagnosing and treating people with these injection injuries, people like Bree Dressen. In total, they treated about 23 people.
Okay.
Now, when they were treating them, they said, no, don't talk about it. Mm-hmm. We want to gather all of information before we provide guidance to doctors so they know the best way to treat. Within that time frame, Dr. Nath definitely acknowledged the fact that early intervention, early treatment was crucial to get the best result.
Right.
They never published the study until 2022 when those injection injured people started going public. They were forced to do it. It's the most meager little one pager that they uploaded to a preprint server and told no one. Just like the Grinch who stole Christmas, solve world hunger, tell no one.
Right.
That's what they did.
So there's like a million questions here, obviously, but I think no, you're good.
Not too long.
No, don't worry about it. It's all necessary information, but I think at the center of this, there's obviously the question of whether or not it was like a cover up, like we're just going to cover our butts because we're obviously in a bad situation, or if it's something much more sinister, if this was purposeful, and if they were, because I read some of the report and the Pfizer vaccines says, quote, there's death and sudden death associated with Moderna and Pfizer vaccines. Like knowing that in 2021 and the public knowing that would have been nice. It would have been helpful. And they didn't tell anybody that. And they actually shouted everybody down and shut people down who did try to tell people that. So what's the motivation for shutting all of this down?
Well, again, if you approved it, do you want to admit that what you approved is killing people? permanently disabling them. And by the way, that's true. That's not just the regulators. That's doctors who pushed it on people. It's Stephen Colbert, who had the dancing syringes behind him. It's members of Congress who cut videos, get that jab, end the pandemic. Again, society-wide, so many people pushing this. Remember, this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Look at all the news media figures. They were just pummeling people who didn't really want to subject themselves to that gene therapy. But again, because they wanted to control everything, they had to get the approval so that Biden could mandate it, right? So that was crucial. I think it's a combination. Obviously, the ties to big pharma, capture and corruption of these agencies, but it's just at this and to this day, by the way. So I've written not only that report, okay. April 29th, we had the hearing, issue that report. It's just like 6 weeks later. Now, one major news network has covered this. CBS had Major Garrett interview me on a streaming service, but no news coverage of this. I've written what I think is probably the best op-ed column I've ever written. I've submitted it now to Wall Street Journal. They turned me down. New York Times turned me down. We're not getting an answer from Washington Post. We submitted it to USA Today. Hopefully I can get somebody to publish this. So it's radio. Again, I think this is the biggest scandal of my lifetime. Why? Because we have the right to know. We need to have information for informed consent. And so if you go back to what VAERS was showing in March of 2021, there were a lot of deaths. There were thousands of deaths. There were hundreds of thousands of adverse events by that point in time. But at this point, it's 1.7 million adverse events. It's 39,000 deaths. So all those people after March 1st, when Peter Marks was told that his algorithm was going to hide safety signals and then show the safety signals, which he denied, all those people have every right to be totally upset. And then I'll add one thing, because now we know the FDA has admitted that children were killed by these vaccines, right? There's a little mini scandal just in that revelation as well, but I won't get into that. We're still trying to uncover it. But they've admitted that there were children probably or possibly killed by the vaccine, okay? Imagine you're one of those parents who believe the lies, believe the coercion, and decide to get your child vaccinated so they wouldn't transmit it to your grandparent, even though now we know it didn't prevent transmission. And then your child didn't wake up, or your child is now permanently disabled. I held the first press conference with Maddie DeGarry. She still hasn't been properly treated. So again, that is the evil done by these people that did not provide the global public the information we had the right to know, so we can make informed consent about whether subjecting ourselves to a completely experimental gene therapy. It's not a vaccine, it's a gene therapy.
And so one of the weird things during the COVID pandemic and during the rollout of the vaccines was that they were pushing it not just on elderly folks, but on younger, healthy 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 18 to 30-year-olds. And a lot of my friends, I'm 26, a lot of my friends just went and got it. Can't go to school, can't go to your job, can't do anything if you don't
go to a concert.
Can't do it. Yeah, you couldn't do anything. And so did you find anything about why they were pushing that on young, healthy people?
Haven't yet.
Haven't yet.
Really, one thing we have found, again, it was my staff who picked the needle out of the haystack on David Morens, Dr. David Morens. By the way, that wasn't information we got from HHS. That was from one of the colleges, one of the universities that was getting grants from HHS. So they provided 115,000 pages to my staff, and my staff picked out that needle in the haystack about Dr. David Morens saying, I've got this FOIA lady who has shown me how to make emails disappear. And if you're going to send me something sensitive, send it to my Gmail. So we see other evidence that as well. Say this isn't something we should put in an email. Let's talk offline. So these people are well aware of FOIA. They are well aware that they shouldn't put incriminating things in writing on an email server, and so they don't. So it's really pretty amazing. We found as incriminating, as strong and clear-cut evidence as we found of this cover-up.
Yeah. So what's the ultimate goal here? Because what you're saying is so broad and vast and involves multiple different industries. It involves the media, obviously the government, these pharmaceutical companies. What's the ultimate goal? Or to like these are criminals and they tried to kill people, or if you believe that was their intent, which I think it was, like, what do we do about this? Because it involves so many people in so many industries and companies.
Well, first step is to expose it.
Yeah.
And you've heard the saying, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice,
Right.
shame on you.
Right.
But in dealing with reporters, they'll even read my report. So, but Peter Marks said, well, Peter Marks lied through his teeth. How many times did they lie to us? Masks was total BS. The 6 foot thing was complete lie. That was going to stay in your arm was a lie. Again, there were so many lies told, but yet people still cling to, well, Peter Marks wouldn't lie. Yes, he would, and he did. Okay, so it's about exposing that so more Americans wake up to the fact you better not trust government. I'm sorry, I always say there's a one-word definition for government: power. and as Lord Acton properly noted, that power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and this is corrupt action. And again, I can't explain the exact motivation, but it is corruption, and it costs people their lives and their health.
Yeah. On their children. And I mean, it is one of the worst scandals. And I've seen that too. Nobody's reporting on this. And it's the strange thing. So you write an op-ed, you can't get anybody to release it. I mean, do they tell you why, or do they just not respond, or what's the deal there?
No, they're just saying can't take it at this point in time.
Seriously. So is it just because the pharmaceutical, like Pfizer and these companies probably sponsor and have advertising deals with these media companies?
That would be my suspicion. I mean, if you look, we're only one of two countries that allow big pharma to advertise on TV. And if you ever watch those commercials, and yeah, I'm a sales guy, right? That was my background. There is no way I would ever spend a dime on those commercials on TV. The last 30 seconds are telling you all the things that my product can do to kill you, right?
Right.
Again, I don't even know. I do not even know what those drugs are for. I have no idea what any of those drugs are for. I guess maybe teach your dog how to catch a Frisbee, because that's so you got dogs catching Frisbees, and then now if sudden death or no thank you. So the only reason they spend billions is to buy the narrative, and it works. I mean, look at how thoroughly captured the news media was. They used to report. There used to be serious reporting on vaccine injuries prior to the 1986 law, or prior to 1997. You had Phil Donahue. You had Mike Wallace on the swine flu. In contrast, after 25 to 30 deaths and 400 to 500 cases of Guillain-Barré disease, they pulled the swine flu. We have 39,000 deaths but nothing to see, because they didn't see safety signals. Those deaths, by the way, 24% of those deaths, those 39,000 deaths worldwide, occurred within 2 days of vaccination. Either the day of, now I know VAERS doesn't prove causation, but if I had a perfectly healthy loved one that went and got vaccinated and died in their sleep, or died within a day or two, I'd go, yeah, my guess is probably that vaccine or that injection.
Look, I mean, my wife at 21, 22 years old, took the vaccine, went to work, passed out the next day at work, and had the ambulance had to come and get her. Now she's fine. Like, we have kids and our life is normal now, but it's like, I talk to people all the time. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. I talk to people, the progressives even, who are like, I took this vaccine, I had a stroke, or I know somebody who had a stroke, and now they're a little bit skeptical, which is shocking. You've been to Madison.
So we are researching and funding research on long COVID.
Really? Okay.
How many cases of long COVID do you think are really injection injuries?
I mean,
my assumption would be an awful lot of them.
Yeah,
long COVID does exist. I mean, the spike protein is the nasty part of the coronavirus. We turned your cells into manufacturing sites for the most toxic part of the coronavirus. Gee, what could go wrong? And they knew it was going to biodistribute all over the place. They had the Japanese FOIA, the results of a study of biodistribution in rats all over the body, accumulating things like the adrenal glands, the ovaries. And so if something, let's say that thing got out and attached to a heart cell or heart cells. So it enters the heart cells. The heart cells then produce the spike protein, which expresses itself in the body, recognizes that it's foreign, it's toxic. The body attacks it. When the body attacks something in itself, it's called inflammation. Myocarditis is inflammation of the heart. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical researcher. This is obvious to me. And by the way, fortunately for me, I was talking to Michael Yeadon before the emergency use authorization ever granted. He was beside himself. He could not believe this. He was a 30-year employee of Pfizer, retired as a senior vice president of research. His background is in toxicology. And he was beside himself. He couldn't believe what his colleagues were doing. He said, Ron, we got educated together. I know what they know. I know they know they're lying to us. He said, there's a long list of ingredients. We didn't put in injectables because they're toxic to the body. And yet my colleagues are producing something that's going to cause the body to produce something that's toxic to it.
Yeah.
Out of control, by the way.
I think one of the most chilling aspects of 2020 and the COVID pandemic was just the fact that there were so many doctors who knew what you're talking about, and so many people who knew and did not say a single thing. They just kept their mouth shut.
The thing is, they didn't know.
You don't? Okay.
Dr. Robert Malone produced. He didn't quite. He took the shot. Asim Malhotra. He was on British TV pushing the shot until he had his own adverse reaction. So we've had 2 hearings where the Democrats have called in an expert witness. Okay, one was Dr. Jake Scott. That was the first one. And old Dr. Scott, I mean, he's the expert on this stuff. These things can't cause injury. These things are perfectly safe. I started asking him, so Dr. Scott, do you think the mRNA inside these injections, is that true mRNA? What do you mean? I mean, true mRNA degrades very rapidly in the body. Very rapidly, which is why they had to encapsulate in the lipid nanoparticle, which is designed to permeate difficult to permeate barriers like the blood-brain. So they knew it wasn't going to stay in the eye. Put that aside. He goes, yeah, it was real mRNA. No, it wasn't. I mean, they've done studies. It's been circulating 700 days. They had cut off the study. He had no idea of the materials or the mechanism in that shot. Fast forward a number of months, we just held a hearing on the plausible mechanisms of the injections causing cancer. And the Democrats called this witness. She's the president of some oncology clinician society, whatever.
Sure.
I asked her, in her testimony, she talks about how this mRNA degrades. I think she said within 20 minutes. So I asked her, so do you think this is like real mRNA? I mean, the Democrat staff didn't even warn their witness. Johnson knows something about this. You ought to be prepared. So again, the doctors, I mean, she was Emily qualified. My witnesses were really impressed at how highly credentialed the Democrat witness was in oncology. Yeah. And here she is to testify that, these things, there's no proof that these cause cancer. And she doesn't know the makeup or the mechanism of the injection. So I'm just pointing out, you said doctors, I think most doctors just took things on faith. They believed Peter Marks.
But there were other scenarios in which, like, I worked for the Scott Jensen campaign back in 2022 in Minnesota when he ran against Walz. And, he had received the message from the Minnesota Department of Health telling him, hey, somebody dies in a car accident and they have COVID in their system, put COVID as a primary cause of death and the car accident as a secondary cause of death, which obviously inflates the statistics and makes it impossible for us to know what actually happened. That sort of stuff was happening, and not a lot of people spoke out about that.
Well, and the hospital protocols too. Nurses called remdesivir run, death is near. They knew it, but the hospitals made a killing off of remdesivir. Yeah, they made a killing off of COVID patients. I mean, I've seen reports. I haven't really researched this, but I mean, literally, they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars off each COVID patient. So I think they got a 20% upcharge because of the the COVID relief bills we passed. So there's every incentive to slap people on remdesivir, even though the World Health Organization recommended against its use.
Just want to interrupt this interview for 1 minute to tell you about a brand new book that just came out called Dangerous Misinformation, The Virus, the Treatments, and the Lies by Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. A lot of you know who she is. I've had her on this podcast many times. She is one of the most trusted doctors in the country in the health freedom movement. She is trying to bring awareness to getting the vaccines pulled from the market and uncovering the truth about what actually happened during the COVID-19 pandemic, the scandals, the lies, and the corruption in our government. And so go check out her new book, Dangerous Misinformation. She's a wonderful writer. She's one of the most fierce and honest truth tellers in the country when it comes to the COVID COVID-19 pandemic. She was on Joe Rogan. She was on the Tucker Carlson podcast. She is a wonderful spokesperson for the truth. There's so much that needs to be uncovered still about what happened during COVID. And this book, Dangerous Misinformation, the Virus, the Treatments, and the Lies, is central to the uncovering of the truth. And I'll just add, this is not a paid ad. This is not a paid sponsorship. I am doing this simply because I believe in what Mary Talley Bowden is doing and what this book is representing and what it tells you and the truth that it shows. And so go and check out the link in the description. Go buy Dangerous Misinformation, the Virus, the Treatments, and the Lies by Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. Now back to my interview. Yeah. Well, I think this comes down to two questions. I guess two questions that I'm thinking of right now. One is, how do you get the vaccines off the market? The second one is, how can we stop pharmaceutical companies from controlling the media? I mean, that's ridiculous. This is the biggest story I've ever, I'm 26. It's probably going to be the biggest story of my life. Hopefully nothing worse happens, but you can't even get people to report on it. And the whole job of the media is to report. It's like why NPR is a bad idea. They're never going to report on where their source of funding is coming from. So why would you let that happen at whatever, New York Times or the Wall Street Journal? Do you have answers to those two questions? Yeah, go ahead.
The silver lining that is the tragedy of our miserably failed response to COVID is that it opened up an awful lot of people's eyes.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to believe that the government we pay for, these civil servants are, that they literally aren't doing their job in the public interest. They're doing it for Pfizer's interest or their own interest. Yeah. Or, they're not doing their job. So nobody really wants to believe that. Mm-hmm. Believe it. I mean, government is corrupt, and it's not just this. I mean, take a look at big food, and again, I'm a private sector guy. I have no problem with big business. I have a problem with big business to use their power to not only figure out how to live in a highly regulated world, but then figure out how to use those regulations in those agencies, how to capture those agencies and turn them to the benefit of you, to the detriment of your competitors and to the American consumers. I mean, that's what's happening across the board. It's not just big pharma, it's big food, it's big food processing. It's any big business that's regulated by the federal government has figured out a way to, in some way, shape, or form, capture things, get legislation written to, again, in their favor, to the detriment of their competitors and potentially to American consumers. Government's awful.
Can I just ask, so what do you know, what exactly did the Biden administration know? I don't know what Biden himself knew, but Biden administration knew, or what exactly Fauci knew? What does this mean for them? Because in some ways they're at the top of this. They're at this.
Well, I'm quite sure Fauci knew he was funding gain of function research, was to do anything he could to weasel around the prohibition, the moratorium on it. Which is why he assembled those people in late January, early February that initially said, "No, this is looking pretty much man-made," and within a couple of days, "Oh no, there's no way. That's conspiracy theory. This sprung from nature," because their fingerprints are all over it. They funded Ralph Barrick, who gave all the information, the humanized mice to the bat lady, taught her how to do it. Funded Peter Daszak and EcoHealth, who provide the funding for it. It's obvious. It's one of the reasons I've let Rand Paul. He's more interested in the COVID origin story. I'll let him do it because it's been obvious to me since early 2020 when I was talking to computational biologists and the furin cleavage site, that type of things. Now this was man-made. I have no doubt whatsoever, and I also have no doubt that we'll never find a smoking gun. They've destroyed the evidence.
Seriously, you don't think we'll ever find?
Again, the actual genomes and stuff of what was actually in the lab, and that's probably been destroyed. Chinese government's probably pretty thorough. They went in there, they destroyed that evidence. But we have so much circumstantial evidence that I think you'd be pretty easy to convict somebody. But again, we've given him a pardon. Government does a really good job of making sure they have no liability in this, and they also protect their employees, people like Peter Marks that do their bidding.
So I talked with Peter McCullough last week. I've talked with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden a couple of times. Obviously, the people in the health freedom movement want to see the vaccines pulled completely off the market. What's the Trump administration's deal when it comes to that? A lot of people are frustrated. They're not pulling them. Why?
Listen, I support what President Trump does in so many things. He's doing things that nobody else would do that have to be done. Okay, so I appreciate that. This is a blind spot for him. He did Operation Warp Speed. He wants to believe the fanciful estimation of how many lives are saved. And by the way, I just saw John Ioannidis downgraded. Some estimate said like 20 million lives saved globally. Ioannidis now has downgraded that to about 2.5 million lives saved, almost all in the elderly group. Which, again, if you read his analysis,
they downgraded it by 18 million people.
Yeah, it went from 20 million. Listen, I've disproved the Commonwealth Fund, and Blumenthal's used this in a hearing, so I had to debunk it, saying that we saved 3.2 million lives in the U.S. just in 21 and 2022. Well, I won't go through the whole proof, but it's very easy to show just graphically. Mm-hmm. We went from 2.85 million lives the year before the pandemic, deaths. Okay. Yeah. This is very steady. It grows very steadily over time as we age. It's about 1% growth rate per year. So, in 2024, we should have been about 3 million deaths, starting about 2.85 million deaths in 2019. So the year the pandemic without a vaccine, we went up to 3.4 million. So something was happening. There's an extra 500,000 deaths, right? Well, the vaccine really worked. You'd think that 3.4 would start normalizing back down to that 2.8, 2.9 level. No, it went to 3.5. Then the next year, it back down to 3.3, but still well above the 2.85. So in order to assume that the vaccine saved 3.2 million lives, you would have to assume it would have gone from 2.85 in 2019 to 3.4 million in 2020 to 5 million in both 2021 and 2022. That's what you'd have to believe in order to believe it saved 3 point. So again, I think I've completely debunked that just with simple math. I didn't need all these studies, Johnny, these guys are looking at infection fatality rates. They're just doing all these different modeling, a bunch of egghead PhDs that come up with numbers that are senseless. That's what the Commonwealth study was. Again, there's a bunch, 5 or 6 PhDs on that study. It's like, you guys, just pull your heads out of I'll say sand.
Yeah.
Look at the basic math. There's no way it saved 3.2 million lives.
Yeah. Well, PhD doesn't mean anything anymore. It used to mean something. I guess, man, there's so many things, and I think one of the great fallouts of COVID is just the distrust in major institutions, whether that's media or the educational institutions or whatever. I guess, do you think that we can rebuild any of that trust, or what's this going to take? Because it does feel to me like, yes, people's eyes are being opened to the facts of what happened over COVID, but a lot of people refuse to believe it, and they'll die on the hill of, I got the vaccine and I will never change my mind about it. And so there seems to be too many people like that for things to actually significantly change in the country. I guess, do you see it differently?
Well, first of all, I think it's tragic that we can't trust these institutions. I wish we could,
yeah,
but we can't. And again, it's a growing percentage of Americans that are, they don't trust doctors. They don't trust medicine. I know people will not go into a hospital. Those hospital protocols killed people. They took away people's freedom. You are a prisoner. Your families couldn't even get you out. Okay, there's a attorney. I think his name's Ralph Larijo, and he started representing these families whose parents are being held or their loved ones being held captive in the hospitals. Just begging him, please, just try ivermectin, try budesonide, try these things. Hospitals said nope, niet. So he started suing the hospitals, and these are rough numbers. Of the, let's say, 40 cases he won, 2 or 3 people died, or of the 70 cases of the 70 he lost, they all died. Anecdotal, but the only way to regain that trust is there needs to be a reckoning, and these institutions have to fess up the fact, no, they lied. They lied bold-faced. Here's all the evidence. Senator Johnson here, rather than sabotage my efforts, and quite honestly, Bobby Kennedy's efforts, cooperate with us. Give us the evidence so we can together lay out, here's what happened. Understand this is what happened, and we're going to try and do everything we can to make sure it never happens again. But, people are people.
Oh man, it's infuriating even listening to this, because I think, I mean, I can remember back to 2020. I was only 20 years old, so I hadn't experienced anything in my life, but the whole thing was weird. Stay in your house. Don't go to your grandparents' house. Maybe you didn't see these, but there are the videos all over social media where people were like in big bags and bubbles giving hugs and stuff so that they wouldn't touch each other.
It was absurd.
It was crazy. And so, man, that's just, it's hard to even imagine that, there is half the country still that doesn't believe in the things that you're saying. Has there been an effort? Obviously there's an effort from from the media to shut down what you're trying to say. Has it been picked up by independent voices and things like that? Like, is it getting out there to a lot of people?
Without doubt. Good news is we do have alternate media. We've got podcasts like this. I'm being interviewed by a bunch of different people in different podcasts. Fox News has had people, Maria Bartiromo, other people have interviewed me. Fox Business has done it. News Nation has asked me, Newsmax. So, I mean, those networks, but not the big ones. I was literally on a Jake Tapper evening show, and this interviewing me on something else. Say, Jake, I just texted you my study. Read it and then have me back on. And he was, I can't expect me to talk. I don't expect you to talk about it now. Read the study, have me back on. I texted him, that was a few weeks ago. I texted him just recently, hey, Jake, if you read it, turn that over to our health department. So CNN hasn't. I think I'm going to be going on a CNN program here, though, that they're willing to talk to me about it. We'll see.
Really?
I mean, what are these? Actually, because they also want to do news of the day, and what'll end up happening is they probably ambush me with some rotten anti-Trump thing on there and never get to my study. But we'll see.
Real quick, last question. Do you see, is there sort of a broad consensus within the Republican Party right now that this is a serious problem?
No.
There isn't. Why not?
No. How many other Republican senators or Republican House members did you ever hear talk about this?
No, not many.
Why is that? I've got colleagues who understand what I'm doing, and they're not appalled by it. I'm sure I've got colleagues that are just appalled by it. Yeah. If they could cut off my subcommittee funding, they'd probably do it.
Well, why? Why?
Well, I mean, there's big pharma spends a lot of money on lobbying. They spend a lot of money on, on a bipartisan basis, funding people and stuff. And again, have you read Aaron's series of Vaccines Amen?
No.
Okay, read that. I mean, there's great books, Dissolving Illusions, Turtles All the Way Down, McCulloch's book, Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, Reality. Aaron's series, it's a pretty skinny little book. It just is, it's a seminal work. It kind of takes all that, it's just facts. One of the best, I think it's on page 84, he's got a chart. And, Dissolving Illusions is all about all these childhood infectious diseases. We had pretty well conquered them before any vaccines came on the stage. Now, you can make a plausible case that some, like a smallpox vaccine eradicated, that helped eradicate that. Okay. But still, we had reduced death rates, all that kind of stuff by 96, 7, 8, 9% before any vaccine was available. So Aaron Seary has a chart, I think on page 84, where he lists the number of deaths in the U.S. in the year before a vaccine came on board. So for all these diseases, if you total them all up, it's less than 5,000. So how can they make these claims? These vaccines save millions of lives. Well, I mean, there were only 5,000. First of all, we stopped living in squalor. I mean, this is the main reason. We had sanitation, plumbing. We stopped living in squalor. So again, these diseases are not that big a problem. We also developed antibiotics. We could treat things. Which, by the way, be a little careful with antibiotics because that impacts your microbiome, and your microbiome is your immune system. So, again, I'm always reluctant to take an antibiotic only when it's absolutely necessary, and sometimes it is. But people need to be aware of that as well. But again, obviously, antibiotics are life-saving things. We've learned how to. So that what we ought to be spending all our time and effort on is treatment, which is the whole reason I got involved in the EDC of COVID. I'm the one that's holding hearings as chairman of Homeland Security and Government Affairs. They weren't doing this as the help committee, hearings on early treatment, on hydroxychloroquine protocol, on ivermectin. Because those doctors, eminently qualified doctors, they were destroyed. Their careers were destroyed. fired, sued, licenses threatened to be taken away. Again, what happened during COVID is unconscionable.
Well, even prior to treatment,
up against powerful forces, they're still covering it up.
Yes, 100%. And even prior to treatment, like healthy lifestyle, half the country is morbidly obese. I mean, that would have saved a lot of lives had people just lived healthier lives. And if doctors would encourage healthier lives, I've heard oftentimes they're just trying to put people on another medication rather than saying, hey, go work out, eat healthier. So it's all
that's profitable, isn't it? If you can just treat a chronic illness as opposed to cure it,
right,
or prevent it from ever happening, it's a whole lot. Again, it all dates back to Rockefeller medicine.
Yes.
Rockefeller was all supportive of the pharmaceutical industry because these are petrochemicals. This is a market for his oil.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
Which is why he, funded all these medical colleges and all that kind of thing. And it's the pharmaceutical way. And of course, it's appealing. I mean, I started saying, I understand the appeal of vaccine.
Yeah.
And Aaron Series' book is called Vaccines, Amen. It becomes a religion. It's religious faith.
Yes.
It's safe and effective. Don't worry about the kids that are dying of SIDS. Don't worry about autism. Don't worry about chronic illness. I mean, what do vaccines impact? They impact your immune system, right? So much of chronic illness is autoimmune or immune dysregulation. But the mantra is so strong that the pro-vaxxers are literally able to look the American public in the face and go, but these are safe, effective. Yeah, we know that vaccines impact the immune system, but only to the positive.
Right.
There's no way our vaccines could ever impact somebody negatively, not their immune system. And yet all this chronic illness, which ramped up about the same time we started ramping up all these, this massive increase in the childhood vaccine schedule. So many of those chronic diseases are autoimmune or just immune system dysregulation.
Yeah, it is religious, which is, I mean, I like that you use that terminology because a lot of people won't. McCullough he said that they did a full study. They took all of these different tweets and posts from social media. They put it into maybe AI or something, and they had it sort of analyze why people, based off of their tweets and posts on social media, got the vaccine. And there was millions of tweets and posts. People were talking about why they got it. They took all of them, they analyzed it, and they found that the main reason was because people wanted to it made them feel comfortable, and it got rid of their anxiety and eased their conscience when they took the vaccine, which that's like a religious thing. That's like the government tells you what to do. And if you do it, your conscience is eased and you feel good and you don't feel the anxiety. That's religious. I don't know. That sounds like Christianity in some ways, just with the wrong God. And so it's interesting.
It's a religious faith, but you can understand the appeal. I can get a simple little shot that's safe and effective. And I never have to worry about getting that deadly disease. I never have to worry about being paralyzed because of polio. So I understand. Again, I got all the vaccines. I'm thinking about it differently nowadays.
Sure.
And you mentioned AI. My wife, she went on to Claude and just asked me, what are the, I don't know why she asked this, but what are the top 20 doctors that were pretty well destroyed or accused of spreading disinformation? And so they listed 20. I knew 18 of them. So I've given them platforms. They've had their careers destroyed. So I knew 18 of the 20. But then I said, so do a follow-up question, load in my report. Because Claude's accusing these guys of spreading misinformation because the vaccine's been proven safe, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, Claude is a liberal.
So we fed in my report and asked Claude, read this report and reevaluate your conclusion on these doctors. Completely changed his opinion.
Wow.
And said it's obvious that the government did not do adequate safety studies. It's just obvious, right? So that's Claude. Yeah. And then I asked her a follow-up. So now for other people using Claude, will you include that study to impact your evaluation of future questions? No, nope. Every search is different. So if you import new information, the creators of the AI have got to allow Claude to upload that.
Well, the new information should be integrated into the database and it should be taken into consideration. You would think, but they're created by people who have a narrative. Well,
my report's out there in the public. Why isn't that in the database already? I mean, again, these are large language models, right? They should be every time something, let's look for things, right?
Yep.
But obviously it wasn't.
It's just like Google. You can't trust the immediate thing that it tells you. You got to be able to think for yourself and do some research. Senator Ron Johnson, thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate it. Thanks for all that you're doing right now for COVID and just bringing to light what was hidden. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for spreading the word.
Thanks for watching this interview. Just wanted to remind you to go on over to theparadoxpress.com right now. Check out the new site, check out the new essays, check out the old essays, check everything out. Give us your email, sign up for our newsletter, and we will send everything for free to your inbox every single week. Podcast, essay, we'll send it all over there. It is a new publication for setting forth a vision for conservatism and for Christians in America. And so going over to theparadoxpress.com, theparadoxpress.com. The link is in the description.